Eskilstrup might lose its train station. And if that happens, the entire future of this community center is at risk. In this episode of my docuseries about Eskilstrup Kulturhus, we're racing against red tape, uncovering strange architectural clues in a haunted castle, and trying to turn a century-old ruined building into a living, breathing cultural center. I just recently learned how to drive manual and got my driver's license in Denmark. But honestly, I still take public transport most of the time to Eskilstrup. It's really convenient. There is a train station just 5 minutes walking distance from the building. And that's part of why we thought this community center renovation could succeed. We mapped out travel times, not just for locals, but for people coming from further away. The ultimate goal, to have the building ready by 2030, just in time for the new Femernbelt connection, a major tunnel linking Denmark and Germany that could make this charming little town even more connected to the rest of Europe. But recently, we found out that there's a proposal to shut down Eskilstrup station entirely. This summer in 2025, Dansk Persontransport suggested closing dozens of smaller train stations across Denmark, all in the name of efficiency. The idea? Fewer stops would mean faster commuter trains between major cities. Now, on paper, that might make sense, but for small towns like Eskilstrup, it could be devastating. The train station isn't just convenient, it's a lifeline. Without it, young people, elderly residents, and anyone without a car could be cut off from jobs, education, and cultural opportunities. And for a future culture house like this one, built around accessibility and community, it raises a pretty big question. How do you restore a building meant to bring people together when the infrastructure that connects them is being actively dismantled? Well, I decided to do what architects don't usually do. I reached out to the mayor of Guldborgsund, and I invited him to our community center. I wanted him to see the building for himself, to walk through it, to feel its potential, and to understand what's at stake if Eskilstrup becomes harder to reach. I kept thinking about Jørgen Utzon, the Danish architect behind the Sydney Opera House. Sydney Opera House is one of the most iconic buildings in the world, but what most people don't know is that Utzon never saw it finished.
They began with the site itself. The Minister of Transport was using it as a tram depot, and it took years to persuade him to give it up. At last, in 1958, when they had got rid of the trams and they wanted to begin building, they found the site was neither big enough nor strong enough to carry that structure that seemed on paper light enough to fly away. They had to extend the site on 3 sides by building a concrete deck. The whole site had to be reinforced by concrete piers, 550 of them, each 3 feet in diameter, driven right down to bedrock 70 feet below the surface of the water. But all these were milk-tooth troubles compared with the ones that were to come when they started on the roof.
Halfway through construction, after years of political battles and budget blowouts, Utzon was forced to resign. The new government that came in completely reversed the previous support for the project. What was once celebrated as visionary became a political nightmare. The atmosphere changed almost overnight. The politician who championed the Opera House was gone, replaced by opponents who criticized every aspect of the design and the costs. Utzon was so distraught by how things unfolded that he left Sydney in the middle of the night, never to return. He watched ultimately that his creation was completed by others, but without his input. And this story is a classic example of how groundbreaking vision can be crushed by red tape, politics, and shifting power. It makes you wonder, if that can happen to one of the greatest architects of our time, what hope does a small-town project like ours have? Well, luckily our situation in Eskilstrup isn't over. The station closure is still being debated. The mayor will come by for a visit next month. But whether it's the Sydney Opera House or the Eskilstrup Kulturhus, both projects highlight the critical role that policy and public debate plays in shaping our built environment. and the real power that people have to protect and preserve their community spaces. To clear my head from the station saga, I decided to take a break on my day off and visit a haunted castle. Sølvsø Castle is a 16th century Renaissance manor steeped in history. Once a grand noble residence, it too fell into ruin and disrepair. They even used the castle to store grain, and eventually thieves broke in, stealing the furniture from the halls. But Sølvsø Castle is also known for something darker.
Martin. Say hi.
Caretakers report unexplained footsteps and chilling cold drafts in the dead of night. But here's the thing about being an architect. Even when you want to just soak in the spooky atmosphere, your mind starts wandering.
They painted over the wallpaper to restore it. That's so cool.
Sølvsø has undergone a partial restoration of its Baroque interiors, and I couldn't help but study the construction details, especially the wall paneling. This caught my eye because photos from the 1960s and 70s show that the Eskilstrup Community Center once had a lower wood paneling combined with wallpaper. Now, at Sølvsø, that paneling is a luxurious version of that system. Now, today, something like this would cost a fortune in materials and labor. So I don't think we can really recreate this one-to-one in our community center. We just don't have the budget. But what intrigued me the most was the wallpaper setup. It was mounted on cloth frames that could be detached from the wood paneling. And I thought maybe this was a clever way to swap out wallpaper as fashions changed over the years. With all of these thoughts jostling in my head, the historic detailing at Sølvsø, the very real threat of losing our train station, and the community input from our workshops, it was officially time to go back to the drawing board. Or, well, these days, because architects don't usually hand draft anymore, it means opening up my computer to boot up Revit.
Good morning, guys. I thought today that we would go over the future plans and some of the ideas behind this living ecosystem that I've tried to think about and co-create together with the community. But first, Mama needs her coffee. Just for the record, I do all of this stuff with the Eskilstrup Community Center on top of like a regular job, and sometimes, man, this is what keeps me going. Okay, the original floor plans are more or less just one floor. There's a little bit of a first floor when you come into the secondary entrance. Now, we believe that this was the original entrance. This is the entrance that we can see on all the area photos, for example. The challenging thing is that we're dealing with a lot of different variables, a lot of different conditions. Parts of the building was built in 1908. The whole front part of the building came later. What we can see is that this was the original entrance here, and then we have a lofted first floor condition above. And you really just have, in terms of the existing layout, you have the Great Hall, and you had a sort of living room, eating area over here. You had a kitchen. We discovered some secret bathrooms in this illegally built extension that we didn't know about, but it's good, and I'll get to it in a second why it's good. And then there's also the toilets where, as I said in the last video, as I was touring the actual building, I thought, how do you actually use the men's room? Because it's just like a hole in the ground. So apparently the men used to pee against the wall, and then that was the urinal. Kind of ratchet, you know, sometimes what works, simple is better. we need to update everything to code. Nothing is even insulated in this building, which is actually a very good thing. If they had insulated it improperly in the 70s or 80s, what could have happened is that condensation could have built up in the brickwork and actually destroyed the brickwork. But because the building has never been insulated, now we actually have the perfect blank canvas to work with. So I am working with a lot of engineers and other specialists and technologists to figure out what is the best insulation material, at what point do we insulate at, how do we avoid condensation building up using modeling tools. So that being said, after we went through the workshops with the community, there was a lot of input on wanting to have access for quieter things, but also more social things. And based off of this, I thought it would be a good idea to have all that activity that's kind of loud, very social, very noisy on the ground floor where you first enter. And this is also to a ground floor where people can come in from the outside of town and experience something culturally unique about this town, about this area. The idea is to not just have this as a community center, but maybe also a showcase about what makes everything down at Lulland and Falster so beautiful. For me, there is a tremendous group of local artists and craftspeople down there that are really talented, and they're sort of disconnected from Copenhagen as the main cultural capital. And I have this idea that you come into the building in the future, and one of the first things that people can see is that there's like a local craft and art exhibition that maybe changes out pretty regularly. Of course, we can use the Great Hall in the future for this function, but the Great Hall is also going to be our moneymaker. It's going to be what's rented out for parties, for confirmations. And even if there's some art exhibitions in the Great Hall at some point, I really wanted to have a dedicated corner that's just really about showcasing what's local and what's really special in the region. And that kind of being the first thing that visitors see when they come in. Then what everybody said, they all said this, they said the only thing we have available in Eskilstrup is pizza. And could we please just have like a nice cafe where we can get more than pizza? And I just thought that was such a lovely idea. So what I've tried to do here is I've tried to extend out this area of the building to be this cafe experience area. Potentially, we could extend the building out a little bit to have this uninsulated winter garden area, sort of like the greenhouse or glass house, orangery type little extension here into the courtyard. And my idea for that was, because the building does have a courtyard, it's going to have some nature, maybe a goat, maybe not a community pony, maybe a community goat. I don't know, we have to see. But in the winter in Denmark, it's cold, it's miserable, it is really rough. And I personally spend a lot of time going to the botanical gardens, going into that greenhouse, and just getting a little bit of summer and winter. And my idea with this winter garden is that then you have this connection to nature all year round. This becomes a place where hopefully people can join knitting clubs, have a cup of coffee, have a piece of cake, knit with your neighbors. Maybe the local drawing club meets there. This becomes sort of an informal gathering spot all year round. And then in the summer, you can open those big glass doors so you get the air coming into the space, and so you're not boiling in there. And so then you're having that airflow then go through this whole space. The other thing that you may notice about the building is that the entrance for the secondary entrance has changed dramatically. We do have this very long ramp. With older buildings, there is a challenge to update them for accessibility. And in my opinion, the code, being what it is in Denmark, is actually really way too low. And that is why I've been working really hard with Lindsay Jensen from Changing Places Denmark to get her input on how to deal with these challenges. and update the building in a way to make it functional for everybody. There's a lot of people in the community that have accessibility issues. We really need to fix that with this building. So we've tried to add this ramp to the front of the building. I don't know how much space we have to execute it, but we're gonna execute it because there has to be an entrance already from the street level that you can access easily to get into this building. I don't want people to have to go in through the courtyard to be able to access this building. I want it to be that everybody can come into the main entrance. And right by the main entrance too, we placed a placeholder for now, a 12 meter squared bathroom that will be a fully accessible bathroom. And the idea is that it becomes a Changing Places certified bathroom where any person with disabilities that needs to be changed as an adult can physically be changed. That means we'll have like a lift in the ceiling to help lift people and have a changing table that is large enough to safely and carefully and in a dignified way change people. And I'm a little passionate about bathroom designs because it's kind of a meme that every starting architect, all they do is design bathrooms. This was me. I've designed so many toilets, and I'm really excited to design some really beautiful public toilets here and also design like one of the first Changing Places bathrooms in Denmark. I believe there's only 3 certified Changing Places toilets in Denmark, and my idea is that this could actually be a very important rest stop for people traveling through the region, that they would come because they know that they can use this bathroom. Now in the front of the building, if we go back to the front of the building, I've tried to set up a dedicated play zone area with puzzles, with board games, but also a little corner where you could park like your kids and they could play with things, that they could have some toys and stuff. And my idea with this puzzle board game area is that we get this mix of generations. I have so many fond memories of playing Scrabble with my grandparents, of putting together puzzles with my family members, and also too as a child playing publicly and knowing that there's other adults in the area kind of like looking over me, like if my siblings started beating me up or something, like they'd intervene. There's something to be said for these social play areas. They're super important. So I really wanted to have like, you know, this really decentralized offline gaming area, similar to Bastard Cafe in Copenhagen. In the area where the original toilets were, because all the plumbing is located there already, again, 2 birds, 1 stone. Same thing with the Changing Places bathroom. That hidden bathroom, we're gonna probably reuse the plumbing that's already in the ground. That connection, we'll probably be able, hopefully, to just tap back into that. So that's why these water elements are placed in these places, so that we can sort of reuse the existing infrastructure, save costs. Super smart. But what we've done is we've added a secondary staircase. Danish building code states that usually in a larger public building like this, you want to have 2 staircases to the secondary floor for escape reasons. It's going to be interesting to see what we do with the fire safety here, because the original staircase is a wood staircase. Danish code really would prefer a concrete or iron staircase. We have to save this original staircase that's connected to the gallery in the Great Hall. It is architecturally significant. You don't get staircases like this anymore, not in this country. Even the wood, it's going to be so difficult to replace and just fix. I really want to restore that original staircase, which means that this secondary staircase, it needs to be in either iron or it needs to be in concrete, something unburnable. And then we have that secondary access. So hopefully we can get some sort of dispensation for fire. Also too, we are retrofitting this building. And that secondary staircase is going to lead up to our future first floor. So we have a little bit of dead space when we come to this first floor. It really is sort of a work in progress, the first floor. I also need to get some more input as well from young people. I'll get in on that in a little second. Anyway, you come up to the first floor, and my idea is that you do have a little bit of this dead space here, maybe turning it into some sort of art hallway, like a secondary exhibition space. This is going to be the quieter level of the building. And I also thought to place another toilet there. You just can never have too many toilets in a public building. Come on, guys. Nobody wants to queue for a toilet. But my idea with this is that this would be more of a standardized handicap accessible toilet. Eventually we would have an elevator to the second floor here out on the outside. And so the idea is to make both floors fully handicap accessible as much as possible, so that you have wider door frames, everyone can access this building. Then you have the gallery. That's this beautiful lofted part of the Great Hall that's already existing with the gingerbread trim. That's a really beautiful part of this building, this gallery area. And it reminds me, honestly, of if you go to a church, there's always this lofted area right over the entrance where the organ is sitting. And yeah, there's something about this design that really reminds me of church architecture. We have maybe a space for a little library. It could be a lending library. It doesn't have to be an official library with the Kommune and everything, but just like a study space. My idea, though, is that potentially this could also be an area for a youth club that maybe meets once per week in this space, and then they have their own little kind of hangout spot where maybe, there aren't any adults in the hangout spot, but the adults are maybe below hanging out, chilling. The idea, again, is that you're creating this ecosystem. They're not alone in the building, but they may have this pocket where they just get to kind of collect and hang out with themselves. And then, yeah, they know there's other people in the building. So they hopefully will not destroy the place. Sometimes this happens. There's a lot of concerns about if the youth gather that they will smash things or destroy them. So to hopefully discourage this kind of antisocial behavior, there will be other people in the ecosystem looking out. But unfortunately, all it takes is a couple of bad incidents to lose trust. And so I'm trying to design the building in a way where that trust is earned, it's supported, but it's also, again, it's an ecosystem. There's people flowing, things moving through. And so that trust is supported foundationally. On the left-hand side, I wanted to make space actually for an office. A lot of the children requested a computer or access to a computer. My thought was that this could be a natural extension of the office. During the day, you could have people use this place as a co-working space. There's a lot of people there that have started their own businesses that maybe want a space to gather so they don't have to work alone. And what's really awesome about some of these co-working spaces is they become really cool ecosystems. I use a lot of co-working spaces as a young architect, and I just find that suddenly you find an engineer, you find somebody else that has a complementary skill set that you can use for another project. So you start to use each other as resources and references. And it just makes it a lot easier as a freelancer when you have that community. So my idea is that, again, this becomes like something to have occupied during the day so that the building is in use throughout the day and that the rent from the co-working space can be used to help support the cost of operations in the building. Here in the corner, I've made space for some HVAC and heating units. If we have the kitchen down below in this area, we're going to want to remove any sort of cooking air and exhaust that to the outside. And so try to place this relatively strategically over here so that we can actually do that and maybe exhaust it out over the winter garden in the future. And again, this could be an office during the day. It could be a room with some computers in the evening for your kids to gather and play games with. We do have that disconnected ground floor. And I was kind of on the fence about, do kids really need more electronics? But at the end of the day, a lot of kids are using online gaming as a way to connect with each other. And if they're all joining together to do this, I think that this is a valid form of connectivity in today's modern age. And I think it would be worth creating space for it, just as long as we still have that offline ground floor where, again, we have the focus on connecting without using computers as much as possible. So again, this might be just the quieter space during the day, and then potentially more of a space for the youth in the evening. And I need to workshop this because we did not really get enough input from young people. I need to hear from the people between ages 13 to 20 more about what they think of this, if there's sort of a need for this. I'm guessing, and that doesn't make me very comfortable. So I've arranged a workshop in week 32 with a local forening that is made up of people that have grown up in the area of Lolland Falster, and they're all young, and they all have started a festival called Empower Festival. I'm hoping to get their input on these plans and to learn more from them about what they think the building could need.
This renovation isn't just about restoring a building as a relic like Eskilstrup. It's about redesigning it as a living ecosystem, one that honors its past, responds to its present, and can survive into the future. Now, there's a classic saying in architecture: architects create problems, engineers solve them. And while I'd argue that we both solve problems, I'll admit some of my ideas do make engineers just a little nervous. It was time to dive into the details. Cue Tomislav. Back when I thought the roof was collapsing from water damage, I put out a bit of an SOS on Instagram, asking if any engineers in the area could help. And Tomislav, an architectural engineer, answered the call as a volunteer. Side note, Tomislav is actually currently job seeking, so if you're an engineer or firm in Denmark and you need someone who's sharp, collaborative, and ready to dig into the weird corners of old buildings, I personally can't recommend him enough. From day one, he dove straight into the technical side of things.
This is the current build-up, and by the way, all of these are stuff we should discuss today.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. This is awesome. This is exactly what I was kind of hoping to get your sparring on.
But this is outdated by tens of years. And I was looking into some details because you said you wanted to have a visible structure on the new hall.
Exactly, and we're going to get some sort of thermal bridge here when we do that.
Yes.
And my question is, can we actually do this, or do we have to somehow fake it? Because I would love it if we didn't have to fake it.
I mean, you're going to have some kind of a stop here. So you're going to be able to see the roof structure, but not this actual connection.
Okay, that's fine. So we just have something that's seamlessly going up here.
Yes, exactly. And then the beams are going to go through, and the rest of this truss, depending on how we make it, maybe starting from here, or I was trying to figure out something if we have the roof line like this. And I don't think we're going to be able to have the curved part because it's going to be expensive as hell. But
Can we just
could imitate it.
Can we imitate it
yes.
somehow to have it is imitated to begin with. It's not like a solid curve. If you actually look at them, they're individual
pieces. The current one
pieces.
is not even load bearing. So
no, it's not. It's more ornamental. But I do think we should keep the ornamental curve shape.
Yeah.
So
even some kind of a polygonal.
Yeah, it's
shape.
Like polygonal.
That's doable.
Exactly, and it's polygonal to begin with. If you look at it, it's these little pieces that have been nailed together.
Yeah, I'm gonna figure it out. That's probably something that structurals are gonna deal with more seriously, but I think this is definitely doable.
Yeah, I have something even worse to kind of tell you, and it's actually related to this detail, and I feel bad. Can I draw a little bit on top of it?
Yes, but do it in a different color so I know what I sketched and what you sketched.
Okay, so this is one side of the roof, the way it is. The other side of the roof actually goes up like this.
Yes, and then you have a little slanted.
And then here you have some sort of hidden gutter.
Yeah, I remember. That's why I asked you, are we going to move that wall?
So I don't think we'll move the wall. I think we'll keep the overhang, but this wall needs, when we rebuild we need to fix this because this
maybe the ridge line, the top ridge would move.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the top ridge will move.
That's not an issue if you're rebuilding the whole roof.
So yeah, because the water came in at the gutter line here.
That's why this is
all rotten on the side of our gable, and that's why it looks like garbage. Okay, so you were asking me about the windows here and why we don't make them larger. Yeah. And my reasoning for that was that I wanted to restore the original window designs. Yeah. And so then we're gonna try and use the fact that we're constructing like a new roof to try and bring light down into the building. But then you said we need to do a daylight
analysis to see what's actually happening, because doing level 2 future, doing a gap in the floor that we have no idea how really works structurally, at least right now, is a huge struggle. And secondly, we don't even know how much we can get out of a skylight. Out of a skylight we could get some kind of daylight benefits, but the benefits of doing a huge hole and then having, because if you take a look at the section, for me it's questionable how much of the light is going to travel down, and how, it's going to have to be bright white and always perfect from the outside to be functional.
So let's try and model that maybe and see if that actually is worth a decision worth taking, or if it's just going to be, not worth the trouble. Yeah. That would be great.
I wrote it down.
That's awesome.
Daylight to do, definitely. I think that's a priority.
In the end, my dialogue with Tomislav wasn't about proving who was right or wrong. It was about figuring out what was possible for the building. Because when open-minded architects and engineers work together early in the process, real innovation happens. Normally, architects and engineers work in silos, sitting in different offices, synchronizing Revit models back and forth. But here, bringing engineering into the conversation this early has been a game changer. Still, there's something bittersweet about this. In Denmark, more and more architecture firms are now owned by engineering companies. And from the inside, I've seen how that changes the equation, not just creatively, but economically. As an architect, I can bill significantly more when working through an engineering consultancy firm, even though my skills and experience stay exactly the same. It raises some tough questions about how clients value architects and architecture, and who really gets to lead the design process. Because if everything consistently becomes a discussion of cost optimization, we risk losing the holistic thinking, the layered history, and the charm that makes buildings worth fighting for in the first place. At the end of the day, good architectural design isn't just about cost or code. It's about care. And I'm really glad that we're building a team behind this project that believes in this. I want to close off this video with a personal note. Recently, my channel got enough subscribers and watch time hours to become an official YouTube partner. Thank you so much, guys, for helping me achieve this milestone. We have a Patreon account set up. We have now the YouTube partnership program that I'm setting up with membership options. And what I'm trying to do with all of this is I'm trying to organize it all in a way to help pay for this project, help pay for workshops, all open to the public. Of course, if you're in the local region, please come. You're all welcome. And guys, just thank you. Seriously.